Hello and welcome. This is the Bits vs. Bytes podcast. I am your host, Amag Ric, and today I have Ron.kersic. I said it correctly, right?
Yes.
He is working at the ING bank, and you have to tell me what your role is exactly, but we'll get to that in a second. So could you tell me a little bit about your background and how you actually started at the ING as well?
Yes. Well, but first and foremost, thank you for having me.
Yeah, cool.
It's a real honor. I will be part of a awesome sequence of awesome speakers.
Yep.
So thank you very much for having me. I have no idea why, by the way, but thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Okay. Yeah, that's what
it's because I know you.
Yeah, okay. It's the so how did I end up at ING? I actually ended up at ING in three big steps. So let me tell you those three steps.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's the so step one was me meeting the Sinclair ZX81.
Okay.
Right, one of the very, very, very first home computers. Painfully simple, looking back now, right? But I fell in love with that thing.
When was that?
Long ago. I must have been 12, 13, 14, so beginning 1980s.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so
that's really early.
Yeah, it was very early. I had an uncle who had one, and he then turned out to be my favorite uncle, right? From that moment
Just
on.
because of that.
Yeah, well, I discovered programming in BASIC, right? 10, print, hello, Ron. 20, go to 10. That kind of stuff. To me, it was just sheer magic. And pretty much I decided there and then I wanted to be a programmer. Actually, I wanted to be a jet fighter pilot, but I didn't have to.
Didn't work out.
No, it didn't really work out. So I failed that one. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to be a programmer. Went to university. Guess what? I still like programming. Also like being a student, but that's a totally different podcast. Right? It's So I graduated pretty much as a programmer, and I programmed a ton of stuff. Lots of C and C++. Really loved those languages. Lots of embedded programming, right? Close to the metal, machine language, that kind of stuff. So that was step one.
Mm-hmm.
Step two was the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
I discovered the World Wide Web and I looked it up today, 1994. Right? And I saw the very first browsers or the Mosaic browser. And actually, I really didn't care about the browser, right? It looked crappy and... But I was so fascinated about the server infrastructure behind that. There was a server serving that content. And actually the server was generating that content, right? It was not a static content, it was dynamically generated content. So then I went into server-side programming for the World Wide Web. That was really my thing. And that's step two, because at that point I started architecting things. See, I'm closer to my current job. I started architecting things. So you have all these servers, right? Dozens of them. At that time, large scale meant a dozen servers, right? Dozens of them. How do you orchestrate them? How do you update them? All these kind of things. So did that almost for a decade or so. And then it happened, 2008. You know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, the crisis.
Yeah,
the banking crisis.
It's the
could be
that indeed is true. Or 2007 actually, the iPhone.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's another crisis for another company. I was so fascinated by that thing.
Yeah.
Right? The very first version you couldn't program for, but people were actually hacking that thing, and I was so amazed at how high level the programming was in that device.
Yeah.
Right. All phones before were really embedded devices, and it's the really, really well. Not sure if I can swear on a podcast, but really crap.
Yeah,
right?
crap.
You can always bleep this one out. And I had my server architecture, right? And now I had all these front-end nodes, right? That could do magical stuff. And with the iPhone, I really started thinking about designing solutions, right? So next to architecting, so programming, architecting, designing stuff, right? How do you design experiences with this device? This has pretty magical capabilities, certainly at that time, right? I mean, the internet was always on. You had GPS, accelerator meters. You could do really fancy things with those kind of devices.
Yeah.
So that was my third step, really progressing into a design of things and designing of experience of things. And that was third step. That was the moment that I was sent out via a consultancy organization I was working for at that time at ING. Right? So to start participating in mobile, agile, also design thinking, so that whole mishmash.
Yeah.
And ING was my favorite customer. I was so impressed on how ahead that company at that time was compared to all my other clients. And actually also compared to the organization I was working for at that time. So I did what a lot of my colleagues did at that time. I joined ING.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up at ING 2013. I looked it up today. 5 years and 1 month.
It's interesting that you mentioned the iPhone in this case as well, because what's interesting to me is that it didn't start out as a system where people could really program for it, right? It was... the idea was actually to make Safari plugins. I think it was in the beginning. Yeah. That was something that I noticed later on, is that there were kind of comparisons of the keynotes, right? There was a keynote where they actually said, okay, you need to kind of write plugins and that's it. And then it was like, okay, we're open. Everybody can create for it.
So I think this is a great example that, plans change.
Yeah.
And that's not a defeat, but a triumph. Certainly in this case, but certainly looking back is now easy to say. But I mean, so your plans change, right? It didn't work out, so we're gonna try this one. And opening up the iPhone was a really big event, right? You got this proper SDK, even though you needed to pay $100 for that one a year, but a very well engineered SDK. The whole process of writing software for that one, Objective-C, well, close enough to C and C++ for my mind. That was a really, again, there's the word again, a magical event, writing apps for the iPhone.
Yeah, and what do you? So we talked about ING a little bit, and why you joined. But what do you actually do?
Yeah, that's again. I took the liberty to describe my path to ING
go ahead,
in 3 steps, and I also need a bit more time to actually describe what I'm doing because it's complicated. So officially, I work as an enterprise architect at ING.
That's your kind of title.
That's the kind of title. That's the
they needed to invent some kind of title for you.
That's the pigeonhole I seem to fit into.
Yeah.
But just to clarify a bit what it actually means, right?
Sure.
It's a bit of history. Pretty much the first thing I did at ING was becoming an evangelist or champion from APIs.
Mm.
I was really convinced at that time, 5 years ago, that APIs and open APIs are a very beneficiary thing to have as an organization as large and complicated and complex as ING. Right? Proper web APIs that can be consumed by actually pretty much any endpoint, regardless of client technology. There's really decoupling of things, and I really thought, and I still believe that will spring up so much innovation outside of the organizations or the organizational entity that made the API, that really is a thing to push you for. But not only was I evangelizing the concepts of APIs, I did a lot of tool making around APIs, right? So give people tools so that it is easy for them to start designing and implementing and rolling out APIs. At that time, we wrote an API design guide. Very simple, nicely written, I still like to think, guide on, well, how do you design an API? Do you version an API? These questions popped up. The answer is you don't. But we had a bit of text around that one. So really give people tools so they can start acting on the vision you have been sharing. So that's my job. Right? Understanding what the direction the company is taking, understanding the direction society is taking, merge that one into a vision that can be shared with a great number of people, and pair that vision with tools and frameworks and examples and education, training for people to start acting on that vision, right? To get us to the point we really would like to be in the future. I did that with APIs, and for the past maybe 3 years, 2.5 years, I have been doing the same thing around platforms.
Yeah, and that's actually interesting that you say that, because on LinkedIn it says that you have co-authored the ING platform architecture curriculum. Yeah. You need to explain me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's the thing is, right, platform's such a simple term. Mm-hmm. Right, you can use the term in pretty much any conversation, right? And you can say, we're going to be a platform, right? And it's such a simple concept. But if you see how it works, how it operates, how what makes a successful platform successful? You see a lot of moving parts. And you see many parties involved, and you see a lot of balancing, right? It's not just me creating a product for you, the consumer. No, you have one party that creates something for you, the consumer, and me as the platform owner, I just facilitate, right? I facilitate the creator, I facilitate the consumer, I facilitate the interaction between those parties, and I have to make sure that everything is balanced. Right, and sometimes you do things that don't seem to make sense. Like, for instance, pay one party to show up so that you can monetize more heavily the other party. If you just focus on one aspect, you think, I'm paying somebody to actually consume a service. That doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense if you see the whole picture.
Yeah.
So understanding and discovering and describing and defining and building platforms is hugely complex.
Yeah.
And truth of the matter is there are very few tools and design practices out there that can help you. All our existing design practices are based on the fact I create something as a producer and you consume it. You and I.
Yeah.
It's very linear. And of course, platforms are different. And to help my colleagues, my peers, my stakeholders in finding their way in a platform world, we have developed a platform training. We have developed a whole bunch of examples to understand what platforms are.
Yeah, is that for new employees mostly, or is it also for existing ones?
Existing ones.
Yeah.
And new ones, of course, but pretty much each and everyone who is interested in that one. And in the current day and age, that means pretty much the whole company.
Yeah.
And not just IT people, also business people.
Yeah.
And HR, legal. So, right? I mean, there are many parties involved, and we need a new body of knowledge, almost, to help us find a way in the complexity of platforms.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of it's kind of innovating in a sense in the banking world as well. I think because from an outsider's perspective, I of course I have a bank, but and I actually use ING. I'm not paid by ING in any way to make a kind of a commercial for them, but I do think that they are moving the right direction. You are moving the right direction with them. What I was wondering about is that how hard was that kind of change for people to understand what that kind of platforming means, and what do you mean by the concept of a platform and stuff like that? How hard was that to understand?
It's it takes time.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you can't do a single presentation or a session and people say, oh yeah, I get it. Some people get it immediately, right? But other people need to take a bit more time, right? And it's or it's less top of mind. So I think the challenge for me in the role I am is to play the long game, right? There is a patience involved.
Yeah.
And you tell a story, and you give examples, and you do a workshop, and you try something left and right. Sometimes it works, and you have engaged and energized participants, and sometimes it doesn't, and then you have to stop. Why didn't that one work? What can be addressed in the way I presented this case? So it's also a lot of understanding where people are coming from, right?
Yeah.
And feed that one back into your story. So it takes time and it takes energy. But like I said, it's only 3 years, right? I mean, you can look at both ways. 3 years, oh my God, that's ages, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, in just 3 years, when I did my first presentation on platforms, when I actually use Amazon Web Services as an example for banking, right? We should become the Amazon Web Services of banking.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is a good flag. Well, it embodies what you want to create, right?
Yeah. And now, right? I mean, so 3 years after, pretty much all across the board, we are convinced that this is a direction we should take. Have multiple initiatives that are actually implementing the vision of becoming the Amazon Web Services of banking.
Yeah.
And that's only in 3 years' time. So in a sense, when I said it takes time, but not all that much, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, if you take the longer view, it's not that hard in the sense that it's hard, but it takes time and understanding, and it really is all about finding a language, I think. What's the language, the shared language that resonates with all of us?
Yeah.
Right, and if you have that shared language, then we can have a discussion, and we can have an argument even, right? And I say potato, you say tomato, right? But at least we have a discussion on a fruitful discussion on a shared language, and then you start making progress.
Yeah, it makes it easier to hire as well, and it makes it easier to for new people, or at least the people that you want to bring in, to understand. Okay, this is how we work, right?
Yeah.
And for example, or for existing ones, if you don't believe in this vision or this way we're going, then maybe we're not the best fit for you, right?
Yeah, but also the other way around. What if you don't believe in that vision? I mean, why is that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a fundamental unbeliever, and those people exist, right? But sometimes, because I really learned that people who don't buy into the vision, more often than not, have a really proper and profound reason why that is, right?
Yeah.
And if you spend time on that one, I can see that, right? And
they have their own vision in most cases.
They have their own vision, and it's and now we are at a point that we have a clear language, a nice definition, and a whole set of tools for people to start navigating a path in the platform economy.
Yeah. And this ties in really well with company culture, because I wanted to talk to you about that as well. Is that I know you have a lot of strong views on company culture, and we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. So what do you kind of feel that is missing in a lot of company cultures at the moment, especially the enterprise ones?
Yeah.
A lot.
Okay. I'm so trying not to have a strong opinion here, but I probably
you have
right?
to. You have to have your opinion, right?
No, it's all across the board. You see the illusion of the hierarchical organization.
Yeah.
Right. You have the leader, the CEO or the manager, whatever you want to call it, who is the master chess player, right? Who plans the moves and directs his reports almost as pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah.
Right. This hierarchical, top-down command and control metaphor that you see in every large organization, and there are reasons why you have these kind of structures for compliance, for instance. Right. Regulators would like to know who is accountable. So I get it, but there is also, and I really would like. We should emphasize that more. There are also the other structures, the structures or the networks of influence and the networks of creation. And if you see how things are actually getting built in an organization, or how stuff gets done, it always comes down to individuals and teams organizing in constellations that fit their problem best, right? These are the people, these are the teams closest to the problem. They know it from day in, day out. They have the actual insight in what the problem is you're trying to solve and how to solve that. And they always self-organize and self-optimize. Even in hierarchical organizations, even in the most hierarchical organizations, you see that in the end, when stuff gets created, when stuff gets done, is always this self-organization of individual and smaller teams. Always. Right? So recognize that one. And instead of being the chess master leader, right? You're not the chess master. You know what you are? You are a gardener.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
You create the context or even the ecosystem for these self-organizing individuals and teams to exist and coexist.
Yeah, because you don't. The Steve Jobs quote everybody knows, but you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, at least. It doesn't make sense to kind of create that kind of environment that you have to kind of say, okay, you need to do this. Yeah, why? Who's telling me I need to do this? I mean, I see that these kind of things need to be done first, right?
Yeah. So share the context, share the vision, share the language. There is that word again, right? Yeah. I mean, give people the tools. Hey, there's that word again. To actually start acting on that language, right? And allow them the space to organize and optimize, right? And you're not the chess player. You're the gardener. you're not the leader, you're the leader of leaders. In a sense, your job is to turn those people, right, the self-organizing individual, into leaders.
Yeah.
Let them lead. Let them have and lead themselves into solving the problem. I firmly believe into that one.
Yeah, and how does that work within an organization as big as ING? So how is that kind of transition? Because I can imagine that it was in a lot of ways still hierarchical, right? I mean, there's a lot of middle management and stuff like that. How have you seen that evolve maybe in the last few years that you've been there?
And of course, it has to be hierarchical, right? I mean, we're in a very regulated business, and
of course, someone needs to be responsible.
So having the hierarchy itself is not bad, right? This is not a rant against hierarchy, but this is a rant on acknowledging the informal networks of influence and creation, right?
Yeah.
And it's the no, but like I told you, when I joined ING, I was so impressed on how the culture was changing, right? And at that time, certainly in the IT domain, the agile way of working was taking hold massively in numbers, but also massively in energy, right? And not too long ago, this agile way of working was expanded to the whole of the company. Certainly in the Netherlands, not just IT, right? I mean, of course, Scrum and the Agile Manifesto has its roots in software development, right? But it got spread out to all across the organization. And then, of course, you have self-organizing teams, right? So the word, again, there is the language again, the word is out there, right? I mean, we have self-organizing teams. And actually, they are part of a tribe. A tribe has a self-defined purpose. We use heavily from the Spotify model.
Yeah. A lot of I've seen a lot of companies do that lately.
Yeah, and you see all across the organization that people hook up in guilds to explore a topic they have a common interest in, right? So you see people and teams across organization entities hook up to explore a certain topic. For instance, at ING, we have the ecosystem guild. Now, you can guess what that one is all about. And you see people from all across the organization getting together in the ecosystem guild and exchange experiences and exchange stories and invite external stakeholders to have them exchange their stories. So people are self-organizing, right? And of course, it still is a large organization, and there is a still of management layers. But just the fact that the language is out there, the fact that people are behaving in accordance to that language makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And just to give you an example, this really is my personal litmus test. So 5 years ago, when I went out into the organization, right, as an enterprise architect, I went beyond the borders of IT. I regularly had to explain why I was there.
Yeah.
But dude, you're IT, right?
What the hell are you doing?
Well, it's in a friendly manner, right?
Yeah.
That's totally gone.
Yeah.
I meet people outside of my typical, let's say, span of control, or my typical hunting ground, to use that word. The question, but why are you here, is gone. You're here because you're actually supposed to be here, right? The fact that you're there makes you right for that time and moment. So that's a big cultural shift. And I see so many liaisons now popping up. People all across the organization entities. And I really believe it's because of having this shared language.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy because from outside in, you don't see that. And you usually think, okay, these kind of big organizations, they're big and slow and not innovating that much. So I would like to talk to you about a little bit about the kind of challenges banks face as well, because there is a lot of challenges within the whole banking world. We talked about it a little bit before recording. There are some kind of things that people from the outside don't understand, because I can get my package delivered on Sunday, but if I want to transfer money to someone else, you kind of don't work on weekends, right? It's like it's totally from a kind of different era. But what are kind of what do you feel are kind of the things that banks face in this kind of digital age? Because there are a lot of things that are, of course, happening, and the mobile app, for example, from ING is, in my opinion, one of the better ones that are out there. What do you think are kind of the challenges that these banks still face? Is that kind of... It's better to ask, is it kind of in the digital kind of space, or is it more in the kind of cultural change that we already talked about?
The answer, of course, is both.
Yeah,
it's the and the feedback loop between those, right? I mean, one of the things that digitalization has done is that it erodes industrial barriers. I really think that we should stop thinking of our industry and our organization as a bank. Yes, we are a bank, and we have a bank license, right? We have to live up to that license. But you can't say, yes, but we're a bank, so we're exempt from certain forces. It's totally not.
No.
I mean, so who are our competitors, right? Yes, I work for ING, so you can name a couple of other banks who are competitors, but at the same time, right? Not in the Netherlands, but Apple Pay, right? That's a company that makes nice shiny devices, and they have a payment system. It relies on banks still, right? But it's you can pay with that one. So they sell or provide an experience that competes with ours.
Yeah, and they're a tech company.
Whilst not being a bank.
Yeah.
Right? So you see, you have these kind of new competitors. Many of the fintechs, they are not a bank, but they provide an experience that competes with experience banks used to provide exclusively. So that's get even bigger. But even you mentioned tech companies, right? I mean, they set the bar so high for integration and convenience and directness, right? You mentioned the example, I cannot make an order now and I get it delivered tomorrow morning, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if we do a repeat podcast in 2 years' time,
you can get it the same day.
I can get it during the course of this podcast, probably.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so your whole perception of what's good and direct and friendly and easy changes due to companies who are totally not in our industry. Amazon One Click is my favorite example, right? I mean, so that's how easy it is to actually order something. Click, there it is.
Yeah, and that brings me also to the kind of perspective that outsiders have a lot on a particular sector. I listened to a podcast from Tim Ferriss. We talked about it a little bit before with, I think it was Nick Kokonis. I'm not sure if I have the name correctly, but it was also someone that was in the kind of accounting business or maybe a trader or whatever. And he got into restaurants and was kind of starting a restaurant together with someone else, which was a chef. He can do the things. And he saw all kinds of possibilities within those sector, which everyone was like, okay, but that's not going to work ever. But it still worked. It actually works a lot better than everybody thought.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example. I mean, take Uber and Airbnb, for instance.
Yeah, same way.
I mean, in very heavily regulated industries, right? Yeah. And they shook things up. You may like him or not, right? Maybe they have been bending the rules here and there. Actually, they have, right? Let's not say may have.
Yeah.
But you know what? Uber could have been proposed by a conglomerate of taxi companies, right?
Yeah.
Airbnb, the same thing. No, it took an outsider to actually come in and shake things up.
Yeah.
Right, and the fact that they have been outsiders, I think, has been critical into their success. Let's not call it disruption, right?
Yeah.
But at least their success. And there is a chance we see the same thing in banking, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said, stop considering ourselves as a bank. Oh, we're safe because we're a bank. Oh, we're safe because we are a regulated taxi company. Nobody can do what we can do. Well, guess what? Right, we are in a hotel. Who would like to stay in somebody else's property that you don't know? Who would do that? Well, the answer is
a lot of people.
Many people in 66,000 cities.
Yeah,
in only the span of 10 years.
Yeah, and so you're actually saying that you need to kind of move to being more. Well, it's kind of hard to say to be more of a technology company because you already are using a lot of technology, of course. But it's more kind of the mindset that's different, right?
And that is just more than a technology mindset, right?
Yeah.
I mean, digitalization opens up things, right? You can scale in a manner before you couldn't, right? But also the diversity, so scope, speed, of course, right? But in the end, it's about a mindset about creating value for your customers.
Yeah, you mentioned before the podcast that you kind of also look to hire people that weren't in the banking world.
Yeah.
Is that kind of also in the same train of thought that you have for that?
Yeah. It's the so in my sphere of influence, right? If I get a word on who to hire or work with, I have a very strong preference for people who are not me.
Yeah.
Right. Who don't have my background, who don't have my age even. Right. Who don't think that programming is the coolest things ever. Who have a more for business background. Who are way younger. Right. And indeed, who don't have a background in the financial services sector. It's the all these experiences and backgrounds can be learned, right? But having this attitude, this perspective of saying, "But guys, this is silly.
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?" I've seen that happen so many times because I like to think when I'm kind to myself, right? I'm creative, I'm open-minded. Guess what? Only to a certain degree. I accept things that somebody who was fresh says, but Ron, that's stupid. That's honest to God, stupid. No, I can give you an example. Last year I had a young lady in my team. And if she's listening, her name is Agne.
Hello.
No, and she made some really strong observations on the lack of cooperation in the engagement we're working in. And I thought, that's how things happen in a big company, right? You have conflicting interest and she just refused to accept that. And to me, that was such an eye-opener. This behavior that I have been accepting, you know what?
Yeah.
Actually, it is unacceptable.
Yeah, it's maybe because you're blindsided a little bit as well because you've been there for a while.
Yeah.
I can imagine that's a big thing because when you're working at a company for like 5, 6, 7 years or whatever, you kind of easily forget that something doesn't have to be the way it is.
Yeah, and to be honest, that always has been my litmus test, not to stay too long at companies.
Yeah, I know that.
I mean,
we work together at Mirabeau, just for a little backstory for people.
For 2 years, and because I'm really focus on the fact that that you ossify, right? That you accept things, that's how we do things here. And certainly in the current day and age, how we do things here is not a recipe for success.
No, especially in a fast-moving environment like the tech business is.
Yeah.
So looking at that kind of innovation, what's always striking to me is, and a lot of people will say that the banking world is lacking behind in that respect. What do you feel? What's kind of your view on that? Because you're looking at it from the inside out as well. Yeah,
it's the define innovation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's I think that word is so overused.
Yeah, it is.
It's to me, innovation is innovation when it changes the behavior of your customers in a significant and lasting way.
Yeah, like it's really disruptive.
It really changes behavior.
Yeah.
And it's but if you take, for instance, and you mentioned it, our mobile banking app, right? And you said you liked it, and thank you for that one.
Yeah.
And I have to agree. I think it's just plain awesome.
Yeah.
And you can see that people have been using the app in different ways than they used the website before. Right, way more often than the website. I'm inclined to say that is innovation. That's a change in behavior.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, is that really impactful? Well, so I'm always difficult to say what is innovation.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the fact that the agile way of working in our company, but also in other banks, has taken hold. That's also a sign of a changing culture and a change of attitude and a change of perspective.
Yeah.
Right. If you for instance, just look him up on YouTube, Ralph Hamers, our CEO, right, on the things he talks about on technology, on Amazon and Google, for instance, right, and he's the CEO of a large bank. large European bank, right? And he talks about topics that 10 years ago it would be unheard of. And when you see, that's what I think, if you see his hand movements and you see his eyes light up, kind of slightly romantic right now, right? But he gets it. This is not just marketing speech, right? Somebody that is told him, talk about platforms, that's really cool. No.
Yeah, you know nothing about it.
Yeah, you really see it's ingrained. I think that's a market change. I really think so. Look at the regulators. We have regulators that actually require us to open up 3 APIs to our systems. And
really?
This is the Payment Service Directive number 2, PSD2. And by law, we have to actually open up 3 APIs to any third party that has a registration at the European Banking Association. So the regulator requires us to become open, right? Well, talking about a market change in your organization, I think that's rather significant.
Yeah, because people will probably say, okay, well, what about the security and how does that go? How is that going to work? I mean, because especially when you're in that kind of world for a long time, you expect it to be this way because you want it to be safe, and but you can also be safe even with these kind of things, right?
That's it. I mean, that's my whole point. Make it safe.
Yeah.
Right, and you can hold the view. I mean, the data we're talking is not our data, it's the customer's data, right? And we hold that data in our vault.
Yeah.
To use an applicable metaphor here, and if that customer gives consent for using their data in a context, in an application that's not ours, then we have to comply with that one.
Yeah.
But of course, make sure it's safe and it's transparent. And if there is any reason for the customer to doubt or retract, we need to make it retractable, right? So that's our job. But this is what the regulators want us to be. So talking about an industry that is changing significantly, I have to say, maybe not in the most sexy of ways, right? I mean, we're not Uber or Tesla or what have you not.
Yeah, okay.
But still, no, it's the... but I think... And actually, one of the things I learned from your series of podcasts is that I see all these representatives going by from industries I never thought were really exciting or interesting. And guess what? They are exciting and interesting. And why is that? Well, because society at large is changing at a breakneck speed. And what it is changing into, I have no idea, but I know it's changing.
Yeah, and I think the coming back to that whole kind of company culture thing is that what you see a lot more is that the amount of trust put into people is really changing a lot, I think, in the last maybe 10, 15 years, something like that. It kind of... You can work from home now. I mean, that was something that was unheard of. I think a lot of professions can't, but there are a lot that can do that right now. And that a lot of people were like, okay, but how am I gonna have control over the people that work here if they don't come into the office? I mean, it's kind of it's not stupid saying it now, but when it changed, you kind of saw that it doesn't make sense. Why not to? I mean, why not? That's the kind of the standpoint I have on that. What do you do you think that will also drive a lot of change as well? So the whole culture changing to giving people more trust and creating new innovations that way. I say innovations again, but it does change the way of working we have right now. People being remotely and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's not just the way of working, right? It's the way of consuming.
Yeah,
it's the way of creating. It's the your listeners can't see it, but you can. The little wristband I'm wearing here, right? And also the band on my watch here, right? I mean, they were made, this one by a gentleman in Denmark, and this by a gentleman in Heerlen.
Really?
Who made this as part-time artisans, right? And it's the so I'm buying things that mean to me, not from big brands, created in factories, outsourced to some country or another.
Yeah.
It's people. I know their first names, right? Or at least I think I know their first names. So the way you and I as people, the way we create and consume things are changing. So the way we as an organization create and exchange things has to change. So the way then we organize and work in order to make it happen has to change.
Yeah.
So everything is changing at the same time.
Yeah, because for example, if you have like a really, really good developer and he doesn't live in the Netherlands or whatever, what would be the reason not to hire that person, even if he is in, I don't know, in Russia or whatever? I mean, it doesn't matter.
You could for sure make that one work.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Especially with the current technology. Let him come over or her come over every once in a while, and you can still work together even. And I think that's the beauty of technology as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings people together even if you're not in the same room.
Yeah. And it allows you to work where and when the context suits the work best.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's I don't show up in the office all the time from 9 to 5 days a week, right? I go to the office to meet people. And if I have to create, I find another spot.
Yeah.
Right? And I can communicate with my stakeholders just as fine.
Yeah, because that also changes the dynamic as well, is that and what I've seen is that a lot of times in the office you can't have like long stretches of uninterrupted work, right? And that's something that I mentioned Jason Fried a lot on the
you can't work at work.
Yeah, and also the latest book actually,
fantastic.
It doesn't have to be crazy at work. It makes sense to me.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need it, but I'm such a big fan of Jason Fried.
Yeah.
And Basecamp and 37 Signals before that one.
And their focus and their whole kind of strategy, the thinking behind it, and there are some things that I don't understand, but he has an explanation for that. But it's more about the kind of versions, keeping like the old versions alive because people are kind of used to that.
Yeah,
that's a strategy. I mean, you can't agree on everything, but a lot of things are in there. As you said, some kind of things like the 40-hour week. It has to be 40-hour. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to make it 60 or 80-hour weeks.
No,
maybe that's a little bit of a European thing as well. That we kind of say, okay, 40 hours is enough. But
I can see that.
Yeah. Reading that book, I was like, okay, some of these problems are really American.
Yeah, but at the same time, right? I mean, we also don't have the discipline to shut off, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's if you're not careful, even in a 40-hour week, we're still very busy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so as my personal mantra, I really consider it my primary job is to not be busy. Right. So to have time to reflect, to have time to be available for somebody who wants to reflect, to have time for a podcast, for instance.
Yeah.
To have time to actually walk to the podcast, so I'm in a better state of mind. But,
it was a little bit fresh outside, but
it was slightly underestimated, that one.
So when we look at I always kind of like to talk about the future, even though that's we talked about it. It changes a lot within a few years. Where do you see that banking world go? Or that's a bit of a hard question, of course. But where do you think that will evolve into?
Yeah, it's of course, that's a very hard one. But it's what I personally think, and that is really my personal feeling almost about what I can see us converging to, is that because if you now look in the landscape of financial services, right, and whether you call them fintechs or what have you not, but so much functions that a bank does are now addressed by individual organizations. Right, if you go to your typical banking website, be it retail or wholesale banking, right, and you see all these services provided, you can actually link them to individual organizations that also do that, right? But they do it exclusively. But not all of these organizations have a banking license. right? Actually, most of them don't want to go through the hassle of a banking license.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense.
So I can see a constellation or a role or a future where banks integrate and orchestrate a whole spectrum of these single service providers and bring them together in an umbrella, under the umbrella of a banking license. Orchestrate them. Make sure that know your customer applies to the whole range.
Yeah.
That customer relationship management is unified, right? So I don't have to go to that organization, mail to that one, so bring it all together. So you get this really rich landscape that can be aggregated by what's now a bank, and the bank itself maybe not shrinks but focus on the stable and essential core.
Yeah.
And everything else is aggregated and orchestrated and integrated on a flexible basis. The relationships will come and go.
Yeah, because then essentially what the bank becomes is kind of the middle point of all these other services that you can provide.
A middle point with a banking license.
Yeah.
Because I really see a banking license as a huge plus.
Yeah, of course.
Right? I mean, we have to write the license to operate. We also have an organization. We talked a lot about organization, but we have an organization that knows how to organize around the banking license, right? We know how to have that one and keep that one. That's a huge plus, really.
Yeah.
And of course, there are some obligations to fulfill when having a banking license, but we know how to do that. So actually, that is getting back to the Amazon Web Services of banking.
Yeah.
But with a banking license.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, a lot of people will think in the way of, okay, we need a better mobile app or whatever. But
no.
It's more in the kind of integration with the other parties that I think in most cases, even though it's not a bank, will happen more and more, right? You cannot do everything at once. It's just not...
No.
You can, but in most cases, what will happen is that you do a lot of stuff kind of half.
and you can't discover all by yourself what the next set of features is, right? I mean, let others discover for you what's valuable for your customers, and you can then still integrate or acquire or copy and what have you not, right? So. I'm almost inclined to say use that ecosystem of providers around you as a radar to see what makes sense for the near future. So that's a development I could envision and articulate. Will it pan out like this? Will it pan out for the organization?
Probably not.
I work out right now. I have no idea.
It usually happens that
the moment you talk about it, it changes, right? It's almost like quantum mechanics or something. Yeah.
So to wrap up, you know what's coming. What are you most proud of since you started working at ING?
It's a couple of things. Really, a couple of things. You know what I'm really proud of? And that's what a walk does when you walk to a podcast, right? I'm working at this place for 5 years and 1 month. I never worked anywhere longer than 3 years, and I did that on purpose because I didn't want to ossify and to get stale. And I like to think that I haven't. That I'm still as creative and open-minded and forward-looking than I've ever been. And there's something really magical if you stay somewhere longer, right? It feels you get intertwined with the vision. It's not just a job. It's a mission. So I noticed that I was rather proud for being part of this journey for like 5 years and not getting bored yet or angry yet. You know, that you get stale. So that's a nice one. Another one. And somebody told me this recently. I thought, that is actually kind of nice. Is that over the past year or two, I have been able to provide an environment for younger people to come in and work at ING with me on the topic just described. And I'm happy. I'm happy that we have found a way for introducing younger people to the workplace.
Cool.
Right? It always bugs me when I read an article about those damn millennials. And I totally don't get it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, I don't think it's really different than before or something like that. People have changed, of course.
Yeah, it's and of course, but I mean, embrace the change, right? I'm not looking for uniformity. I'm looking for unity. Oh, that sounds like a poetic statement.
Oh yeah.
You know what? I keep it at that. No, that's one I'm really happy about. And so, if somebody in your audience feels inclined to get in touch and discuss things further, by all means.
Yeah, we'll link it down in the show notes. Okay, cool. Yeah, to wrap up, you can find ING on ing.nl. Yeah. You have a mobile app, all over the place. So, and of course, for the listeners of the podcast, you can find Bits vs Bytes on bitsvsbytes.com and also on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, all over the place. I have to tell it every time, but and of course, on social media, it's all Bits vs Bytes on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thank you for listening, and until next time.